this video, this is kind of a continuation of videos I did before on manipulating space, but really it falls under the heading of developing purposeful habits. And the reason why I'm showing this is because a lot of times when I'm doing videos and there are things that I'm doing, let's face it, it can look a little phony or a little, kind of corny. And that's because of the fact that the movement that I'm engaging in is very smooth, very subtle. And so you can't always see the things that I'm actually doing or that Jack is actually doing when we're in here beating the crap out of each other. So I'm gonna go through this. We'll probably do a couple of short videos just so you get the idea on this type of purposeful habit. So in the video where I talked about manipulating space, what I was talking about is when you're dealing with another person, whatever you're doing with your hands, this distance between you, what you're doing is as you're entering on that person, you're not just walking straight in. You're changing the attitude of your body, or what Grandmaster Perkins used to call getting out of phase. And I like that because it just sounds cool. And what I'm doing is, I'm not just coming in trying to do some type of technique to move his arms out of the way. I'm not saying I don't have techniques. There's a lot of technique. But what's really going on is I'm actually changing my body position based on the relationship between myself and the other person. So one of the problems I see in martial arts, and this cuts across the strata, which is why I'm always even careful, even when I'm showing techniques, to hopefully not do this. The people you see doing demonstrations, they're good at what they do, bottom line. And so they make a lot of stuff look easy. And even in the most, most structured demonstrations, they still make a lot of stuff look easy because they're skilled. And you gotta give them credit. There's something to be said for talent. The problem is, if I'm doing a technique and say I'm gonna do like, an outward middle block like I learned in, Ishinru karate, and then I do something like this, there's nothing wrong with that. With a back fist, there's nothing wrong with that technique. The problem is at speed, it's hard to make that work if I'm overly reliant on the technique. So the truth is, how technique really works at the higher levels with the people who are skilled or talented enough is, basically, they're playing off of the movement of the other person they're dealing with. In other words, as human beings, we have the ability to track another person's motion. And this is, the essence of sports. If you've ever played basketball, if you've ever wrestled, this is one of the reasons why jiu-jitsu is so popular, is because of the fact that you get immediate and direct feedback because they're actually feeling what the other person is doing, recognizing the patterns in their movement soon enough to be able to do something about it. It's all good. So as I'm moving with Jack, there's space in between this. I can't just walk straight in because I'm gonna get jacked. So I don't wanna get hit in the face. So what I'm doing is, I'm actually changing the position of my body on the way in. And I can do that because I can feel where his hands are. I can intuitively feel that. Therefore, I train myself or develop a purposeful habit to be able to move on the way in. And then based on what I feel, what I perceive the pattern of his movement is, then I make an adjustment on the way in. The key is, because I'm close enough to feel whether I'm directly touching him or whether I'm almost touching him, I make the adjustments as soon as possible. I don't wait to make the adjustments because time becomes a critical factor. So as I'm manipulating space, what I'm doing is, as I'm entering, I feel where his hands are. Say I want to step, I'm going to step this way so you can see. As I'm stepping off line, I'm also playing off of where I know he is relative to my body. If I have to clear his hand, I'm not pushing and giving up my arm, because then I now have to get my arm back. So I'm moving as little as I need. And you'll notice right in here, I'm exaggerating so you can see, as I'm moving forward, notice I'm actually collapsing my arm, or collapsing the sphere as I like to call it. As I'm shifting offline, I'm keeping just enough contact to know where he is relative to my body for that microsecond I need to be able to make my move and then add the coup de grace. Because I'm not moving my hand first, even though he sees me moving, it allows me to maintain the range of motion in my arm so that should he move, just do whatever you want. So should he move, I can do something because I still have enough contact with him to feel what he's trying to do, but also enough play in here in my arms to make the adjustments I need. So one of the ways in which you can practice this without a partner, because you don't always have a partner available when you want to do stuff. Some of the things I do, and this is just to give you some ideas. I'll take something like a weighted ball. This is like 4 pounds. You can pick these up at Dick's Sporting Goods. Not that this is a promotion for Dick's, but the point is, and what I do is I try to hold the ball in a certain position. So I'll turn sideways, and then what I do is, first, without moving my feet, I start shifting my body forward and back, trying to keep the ball in the same spot. And I do the same thing with both hands. I'm trying to feel myself coordinate this motion between moving forward, moving back, moving forward, moving back, without trying to move the ball. The reason for that is if I touch a person, in the microsecond I need to step in, if I move my hand, they can actually feel that, and I'm not trying to give that away. So from the front, I also go side to side. So as I'm moving and shifting side to side, maybe rolling my shoulders, what I'm doing is I'm training my body to be able to kind of move around and create this kind of polarity where the muscles in my arm are actually working, to make it easier in the opposite direction of what the rest of my body is doing, no matter what I'm doing. Whereas I'm actually playing off of my body and vis-a-vis in order to be able to achieve this effect. And as I'm doing this, and the reason I prefer the term manipulating space versus isolation is because manipulating space is actually a more accurate reflection of what it really is. Because I'm not truly, quote unquote, isolating. I mean, in another life I used to use the word isolation a lot, where I'm isolating around this point. But really what I'm doing is I'm manipulating the space between my body and his body, or my hand and his hand with my arm. That's what's really going on. So as I practice this, moving with the ball, what I'm doing is I'm training myself to be able to place my hand in a position where it really doesn't move, or hardly moves at all, if possible, where I can move my body all around it. The idea is I want to get comfortable with that and habituate that experience and that ability, so that when I make contact with a person, if I need to step off line and I need to clear his hand, I'm not doing stuff like this where I'm moving more than what is necessary, and this becomes a quick kind of movement. But notice, as I'm hitting his hand, my arm is only moving a little bit. The other thing I do is I then also try to stay as close to a person's body as possible when I'm doing that. So in the next video, I'm going to cover that a little more in a little more depth.